we're getting into the point now where you're almost got all of these basic things covered. We've still got a few basic, you know, things to cover, and I couldn't, you know, just in general telling you very generally about what the magic is, you know, what kind of magic exists out there. Every little subject, every little topic, not even in general could I bring up. There's too much. I'd be talking to you for years and still talking. So just because I didn't mention something doesn't mean that it doesn't necessarily exist. It just means that I'm focusing on either the things that I specialize in or the really basic stuff that you really need to know for everything else that you do. After we get into these generalized, okay, you know, this is what this is, this is how you do that, then we're going to specify specific subjects to their own playlist. So each subject is going to have a very in-depth playlist. If you're sitting here thinking, I really want to know more about that, or I really want to know more about this topic, you know, eventually we'll have an entire playlist just for that one topic that you can really dig deep into. But for right now, this is a brand new channel and it's going to take a while to get all of that up there, so please be patient with me. For right now, we're still kind of on the basic stuff. Again, very shortly it'll be, I don't know if it's this video, but if it's not this video, it'll be the next or the next after that. We won't have anything more basic to talk about. So this one is mythical creatures. What are they? What's the truth versus not the truth, and that kind of thing? Well, it depends on who you ask. Modern paganism, they believe that these creatures do most definitely exist, but only in the spirit realm. Only in the spirit realm can they exist in modern paganism. Now, ancient paganism is what I teach. We believe they exist both planes, the spirit realm and the physical realm. It just basically means that, you know, we believe it is possible for them to physically exist with a physical body, you know, on Earth or perhaps other planets, I don't know. But basically, they're the same creatures, right, that we're talking about, usually. But it's just that modern paganism only thinks that they exist in the spirit realm. So the truth of this, a lot of the folklore, a lot of the mythical stuff is in fact just that, a myth. Depending on what you're talking about, some of it is so far off that it couldn't possibly exist at all, and then other ones, a lot of the folklore is wrong or twisted, but the actual creature itself, perhaps what it looks like, that's accurate, you know. What I find interesting is that, really interesting, is that before anyone could travel with boats or planes or anything, before anyone all the way over here on one side of the earth had a way of traveling all the way over there on the opposite side of the earth, before you could even get to all these different places, all these different corners of the earth were describing the same kind of creatures in very similar light. Take the dragon, for example. People were sketching out what that looked like before they ever could travel to someone all the way over here in a totally different part of the earth who is basically drawing the same thing that they saw. So if that many people are basically drawing the same thing, now it does kind of differ a little bit, you know, like if you compare, say, the Asiatic dragon versus the European dragon, okay, there are some differences there, but not so much that you can't say, oh, that's a dragon. You know, you still know it's a dragon. It just looks like a little different. And it makes sense that they might look different in different parts of the world. I mean, that's kind of what different species do anyway. So you're sitting here thinking, okay, if they all saw that independently without being able to communicate with all the other people on the other side of the world, then what the fuck did they see? Because they had to have seen something, right? Something. So whether you believe it only exists in the spirit realm, or whether you believe it only exists, sorry, whether you believe it exists both places, or whether you don't believe it exists at all, they saw something. You cannot argue that, otherwise it wouldn't be so similar, you know, independently from one another. Before we were able to communicating with other ends of the earth, and they were the same. So it's like that for a lot of things. Unfortunately though, when a lot of it looks right, it looks close enough to what it really is, but a lot of the tales and folklore are just flat out false. A lot of that has been bred from simple fear-based theatrics, and not really is it anywhere near to what the truth of it is. Again, if you think about this, I talked a little bit about this in the history of paganism. If you want to watch that video, if you want to look a bit more, if you haven't watched that already, it'll explain more of what I mean about this. I don't have time to dig real deep into it, but basically, isn't it quite odd that all of human existence, literally thousands and thousands of years that we've existed, only the past 150 years do we widely believe that magic isn't real and that stuff like this isn't real. And if we do believe in magic, it's only the kind of magic that is easily concealed and you cannot physically, tangibly have proof of. Isn't it odd that only in the past 150 years, what happened? Well, unfortunately, with all the witch hunts, they died out so fast for so long that eventually it got to the point where there's not enough people who still knew the truth to pass that on. And so a lot of that magic and knowledge died out with them, a lot of the wisdom died out with them. There wasn't enough people to continue on that truth, especially because a lot of people who did survive were too afraid to teach it to their children, thinking that it would make their children even bigger targets. So they went into hiding, or they were simply dead, and that's why a lot of that belief was gone. As far as witch hunts go, they weren't just hunting witches, they were also hunting what the unfortunately Abrahamics called demonic beasts. And so these protectors, these great protectors, like dragons, like other things, like fauns, like whatever we're talking about, whatever creatures we're talking about, they saw them as these demonic beasts, and a lot of times that was even more of a bounty than a witch. So, you know, they hunted those just like they hunted us, and unlike the privilege that we have to at least be nowadays partially accepted by human society, how do you tell something out in the wilderness that humans might possibly, but we're not sure, be alright with something like that existing? I really don't know what would happen if the entire earth saw proof of something, how they would react, because a lot of those Abrahamics might not. If they saw it, everything might just reverse and fold in on itself, even for us. So, you know, they have a right to stay hidden, and typically they stay hidden unless there's a really good reason to reveal themselves to somebody that they completely trust. They're not just gonna randomly allow themselves to be noticed. They have a certain magic to them that perhaps not a lot of other regular totems, what is regular totems believe in, or sorry, what regular totems can do. And so to believe in these things means that you have to understand that a lot of the way that they hide can even go to hiding their bones, you know, like a spirit hiding their bones, hiding any evidence whatsoever that they exist. You know, if you're thinking it that deeply, you're thinking, okay, there's this magic that they must have to hide themselves more than just simply camouflage, in a tree, in a stone, or something like that. It's got to be something of magic that actually allows them, whether it be illusion or some kind of invisibility or a cloaking or something. They have something, which by the way, that magic does exist also. I haven't talked much about that, but they have to have something beyond just your average animal out in the forest, you know, just trying to blend in with camouflage and hiding behind stuff. Because if that was all that they had, then we would have found them by now. We just would have. If you think about it, not necessarily, like I said, does that mean everything is possible? Because it's not. But there are certain things that you cannot rule out that might exist, and especially when it's something like that dragon, for example, that you've got all the way over here, all the way over here, and there, and there, and there, and there, and there, and there, before they could even know that someone somewhere else saw the same thing. You know, their stories have come from somewhere, like I keep saying, you know, they have to have come from somewhere, and to a certain extent, they can't all be spirits, because a lot of these stories have a very physical feel to them, you know, that couldn't just be some kind of spirit thing. So whilst they most definitely all exist, well, sorry, not all, but all the ones that are real exist in the spirit realm quite widely, does that mean that that's the only place that they exist? It's just few and far between have even seen evidence, let alone the actual creature itself in the physical realm. But if you ask me, if they're in the spirit realm, then they have to have lived at some time. They have to have had a life at some time. You know, I'd imagine most things, at least most things in the spirit realm, existed physically at one point or another, somewhere, whether at Earth or somewhere else. So again, it depends on how you look at this, but that is the take that I'm gonna, with all these different creatures, that is kind of taken. I'm gonna separate the myth from the facts, and if I don't know enough, I'm just not gonna talk about it at all. But the ones that I do know enough about, I'm gonna separate the myth from the facts and that kind of stuff. If you do this long enough, even if you never do astral projection, but you just fall asleep and you're dreaming, if you do this long enough, you're going to run across something, at least in the spirit realm. If you're pagan long enough, you're going to run across something in your dreams, at least. We believe our dreams actually have meaning, unless it's something like a fear-based dream. That might not, that might all be in your head, but other dreams have actual meaning. It's not just in our head. You know, there's some truth to it, meaning, you know, that you're not just fathoming all these different things. You know, that if you really pay attention to your dreams, you'll start to see a pattern that a lot of these things you couldn't possibly fathom, because it's some kind of profound message or something that your guides, your totems, have been trying to tell you when you're awake, but you're not hearing it, and therefore they have to reach you in your dreams. So we at least have run across something eventually, most of us, in our dreams, that is some kind of creature of some sort. So that's about all that I'm going to say in general, and then later again we'll have an actual playlist for this topic, and you can go and select, you know, whatever creature in that playlist you want to learn more about. But for now, that's all.